Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
What's going on there? It's February 19th. I'm Frank Curzio, host of the Wall Street Unplugged podcast, where I break down the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. Have to say, getting some emails. When I say some, probably about 10 times the amount of emails I get after a podcast, after last week's Wall Street Unplugged about the coronavirus. Some warnings in there. I said, this is something I hope that I'm wrong on because I don't want to see people die and get infected. I'd rather be wrong on this idea than right, and telling you to protect yourself. And let's get into it because there's a lot of more stuff we need to cover. And it's important you realize what's going on because what they're reporting in mainstream media is absolutely wrong. Is absolutely wrong. You look at the coronavirus, I said it's going to be a big impact to China. On Monday afternoon, what do we see? Largest company in the world, Apple, warned that it's not going to make its revenue guidance due to iPhone delays caused by the coronavirus. It starts. This is just the beginning. Apple, again, one of the largest companies in the world, they have how many suppliers? I'd say dozens and dozens of suppliers who make parts for the iPhone. So there's no way those companies are meeting estimates. Apple is probably building its next generation phone. I don't know if they're calling it the Apple 12 or whatever, but they kind of start building it now. It comes out in September. They're adding the 5G components. So not only is the iPhone 11 being impacted, so is the next generation of the iPhone, which is going to be released in September. How are they going to get all this time back? Now, if you're looking at earnings season, almost over. We have earnings good for most part, but again, stocks near all-time highs. Nobody cares what's going on. Yet, the companies that are reporting are even telling you that they're worried. 30%, guys, 30% of the companies S&P 500 warned about the coronavirus and how it may impact revenue. Tesla said, oh, it's going to impact revenue for a couple of weeks. Now it could be a material impact. Now I'm telling you, and I'm being serious with you, I'm not a perma bear. I'm not a perma bull. I wasn't bearish on the market. Again, I let my research do the talking. And I'm telling you, every company that has their supply chains in China, every company that has more than 10% revenue exposure to China, and every company whose growth component is tied to China. I'm talking about companies like Starbucks, Under Armour, McDonald's, Nike, Tesla, Levi's. Levi's just opened up their flagship store, like a 7,000 square foot, right in, I believe it's in Wuhan, right in ground zero. All these companies, again, the supply chains, more than 10% of revenue, the companies just mentioned, whose growth component is tied to China, are at risk right now. Levi's, nobody cares, up 20% since November when the outbreak started. Nike sitting near its all-time high. Again, nobody cares, even though most of their growth was 21% of their growth came from China. Tesla, all-time high, even though their factory in China just opened. And that was a big part of their growth component. Again, Tesla's not trading on fundamentals. It's not trading on anything. I know there's people giving you $7,000 price targets. Why wasn't these price targets implemented when the stock was at 300? Now at 800. Again, when it goes high, you get the year 4. Everybody loves it. What's going on right now is mostly algorithms that has to do with front running the market, destroying shorts. That's what's taking place in the market right now. It's not fundamentals. I'm not saying this stock, it's 7,000 price target. That's a 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollar valuation on Tesla if that would happen. So I mean, you can go. How about 1,500? Nice double from here, or 2,000. No, 7,000. I'm going to get that report. So I want to see that it's going to be interesting. That DCF model is going to be very, very interesting to see how they came up with that. Again, they have to justify. They can't just put it in there. They're going to show how that company's going to have, $1.4 trillion market cap go to 7,000. I'm curious about that to see how they came with that. Anyway, so earnings season almost over. You have 30% of the company's S&P 500 telling you that we're worried about the coronavirus. It could impact revenue. Now we have the largest company in the world saying that, they're warning that coronavirus is going to impact their estimates next quarter, at least next quarter. So according to the recent numbers, there's a little over 73,000 infected. This number is probably more like 700,000. Again, I'll get into that in a minute. We have a little over 1,800 people who died, which amounts to 2.5% of the people infected. It's important to realize that number. When you're looking at the flu, it's less than 1%. If you're looking at SARS, it was 10%. But early on, because the government was lying about these statistics, not being forthright, telling our best scientists, nope, you can't come into our country to help us. Why? Why? You don't want us to help you save lives? I mean, even if it happened here, we want the best people in the world to come here to help save people, and you're not letting us in. Why do you think that's happening? Why? You do the math on it, because a lot of this stuff, guys, is not going to be figured out with numbers. I know the numbers. I could tell you the numbers. I could tell you the projections. The biggest part of your analysis, if you want to be a great, great analyst, is your common sense. Okay. And you have to use your common sense, because people are trying to put numbers behind this, and the numbers don't make sense, since there's 500 million people on lockdown, and nothing even close in the history of mankind have we seen something like this. But we're comparing it to a whole bunch of things. Comparing it to the swine flu, comparing it to Zika, what happens with the markets? They usually bounce right back. Nothing. We haven't seen anything like this. It's really scary. And now, getting back to that infected, 2.5%, that number has been going higher and higher, which is surprising because it was below 2% last week. And there's no signs of this slowing. No signs. It's important when you think about that number. I mean, that scares me a little bit. I mean, you know, you get the flu, fine, less than 1%. Everybody just goes on their way. You get your flu shot. Hopefully, you know, you could avoid it. But at 2.5%, I'm thinking twice before going to work. I tell you, I know you're looking at those cases, and you say, well, you know, a lot of it has to do with infecting people with respiratory problems, heart disease, older than 65-year-old males, and stuff like that. Still, I mean, you have kids, you have children. That impacts them as well. I mean, that's where you're seeing the highest death rates from this. It's very scary. And imagine you being on lockdown in your house. When they say, hey, lockdown's over, are you just going to run out, especially considering the virus isn't contained? No, it means you're probably going to catch it. In the meantime, China, which accounted for 39% of the global economic growth in 2019, that's according to International Monetary Fund, 39% of global economic growth, right? 39% is completely shut down, right? 500 million people on lockdown. Again, use your common sense, put in perspective. How many people in the U.S.? 370, 80 million, whatever it is. So look at 500 million people. I think about everyone in the U.S. Think about if you were on lockdown. Imagine if you're not allowed to travel, leave your house, no trains, buses, transportation, nothing. I mean, I won't curse, but it's freaking crazy. It's insane. I mean, guys, you got to put this in perspective here. I mean, people think, oh, it's going to bounce right back. I mean, it took 9 months for SARS. It was 8,000 cases. There's 73,000 infected. And I can tell you those numbers times them by 10, at least by 10. And I'm going to tell you why. This isn't me guessing. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to share a lot more stats with you later on. There's no reason. You have Ed Hyman, who's from Evercore, one of the best economists in the world for over 30 years. I mentioned him last week. I think he won best economist for like 39 out of 43 years or something from IBD. But he's predicting China in 2020, so the full year, their real GDP to hit 4.5%. That's for the year. That's the lowest in 30 years. This includes them having a 0% growth rate next quarter, which is Q1, which I think is insane, followed by 6% growth in the second quarter, which I also think is insane. So I'm looking at maybe 2%, 2.5%. Remember, China's going to report whatever they want to report. That's fine. But you can't lie when it comes to your earnings in the U.S. You can't lie about that stuff. Okay? And it is pretty crazy when you look at Apple, and not just Apple, but most stocks are all-time highs with very high multiples. And you're taking the growth component out of the market, and yet stocks are still trading. Apple trading at 25 times earnings. I mean, price for perfection. And now they just warned. And they didn't just warn. They said, we're not even going to provide guidance. They're supposed to generate between $63 billion and $67 billion in sales next quarter. Granted, they have that big, wide gap because they have no idea. It's the largest gap that Apple probably ever had when it comes to revenue numbers. And they said, well, coronavirus. They removed it. They took it off. And they didn't say, well, it's going to be 60 billion now, 55 billion, or estimates may be off by 5-7%. They don't know. They don't have a clue. You know what uncertainty does to stocks. You know what uncertainty does to the markets. People are assuming this is going to be over in 3 months and everything's going to be fine. What if they're wrong? I'm not telling you to short the markets blindly, and you have to be careful even with that because China's going to just say whatever they want. They're going to just make good on all the loans for all the major companies. They're going to just push so much money into the market, right? They're saying, oh, it's almost contained. It's not too bad. But yet the government is allowing refinancing for almost all loans that are due this year. Massive, massive money being injected. Why, if it's not that bad? It is that bad. When Apple comes out and says, we don't know what we're going to report, I mean, they can't even put a 50 handle on it, a $55 billion handle. And 63 billion was the low end. They don't know. Think how that's the largest company in the world that has no idea. We don't know when these sales are going to come back. We have no idea when we're going to be able to start. I mean, how are they going to launch their phone in September when they can't even fill the orders for the iPhone 11 right now? Assuming this lasts just as long as SARS, again, 8,000 cases compared to how many? I don't know. That's the common sense part. And the best part, I'm still seeing people, and I'm not going to call them experts who are on TV. They're not, because they're idiots. But they're comparing the coronavirus to SARS still. I mean, SARS took place, again, 9-month span from 2002 to 2003, only 8,000 people were infected. We have 73,000. It's going to go much, much higher. I can share those stats with you later in my education component. Only 8 Chinese provinces were impacted during the SARS outbreak. Just had minor containment measures. Today, it's spread to all 31 Chinese provinces. Over 500 million people on lockdown. How are you comparing this to SARS? Before SARS hit in 2002, Chinese residents took 16 million trips outside the country. That was in 2002. 2018, which are latest statistics available, that number increased tenfold. 162 million residents traveled outside the country. Nobody's traveling right now in China, not even within China. I'm not even talking about internationally. Again, numbers I'm going to share with you later. Want to keep comparing to SARS? Fine. 2003, China was the 6th largest economy in the world, counting for just 4% of global domestic product. Today, it's the 2nd largest economy in the world. It counts for close to 17% of the world's GDP. Like I said earlier, almost 40% of the global growth, according to the IMF, in 2019. And when you look at this, and I said it earlier, it's something that's never happened, a lockdown of this magnitude in the history of mankind. It's, how do you compare this to anything? The fact that they're going on and comparing it is just insane. But you know what? No worries. Don't worry. You have nothing to worry about. Things are going to be fine. Stocks always rebound when we have outbreaks like this. This is different this time. We're not solving this thing in 3 months. There's not even a lot of information that's being given right now. We're not going to solve it even in 6 months, probably not even in 9 months. But the negative impacts could last well into 2021 before people are no longer afraid to leave their homes and go back to work. Because they are afraid. And they're very afraid. In my educational segment, I'm going to break down the coronavirus even further. Right? It includes tons of stories. It's going to include more numbers. I promise I'm not going to bore you. It's even going to include emails that I'm receiving where you're going to see some of the impacts this is having that people are not talking about. I forget about just Apple and the suppliers and how many companies sell, like AT&T, Verizon, these companies who are going to, the retail outlet chains, the Best Buys, the Walmarts, when Walmart's released, just like from the cases and the chargers and all the stuff that goes along with these phones. I know because I own my own phone store. It's crazy. But if you have any exposure to China, you better listen to this segment because there's going to be new statistics, new things. You're going to see huge impacts to markets that you wouldn't even believe that nobody's talking about. And the numbers I'm going to share with you are really going to blow you away. And it's not going to be in a good way. But first, I have a great guest for you today. His name is Scot Cohen. This is the first time I'm doing an interview with him on the podcast. You may have seen it in a video of mine because Scott is the executive chairman of Wrap Technologies, a company most of you should be familiar with if you're a subscriber. Wrap makes the Bolo Wrap, which is the first 100% non-lethal device that shoots Kevlar rope just as fast as a gun, and it wraps around the victim with hooks. I know about this because I got wrapped myself, and it was unbelievable. I couldn't move. It's much safer than using a taser, and of course, much safer than drawing your gun. I followed this company for pretty close to 2 years. It was on the pink sheets back then. Today, it's on the Russell 2000, trades on the NASDAQ. They hired one of the former founders of Taser as president. And now finally starting to see lots of orders, not just from police departments domestically in the U.S., but from police departments all over the world. So you may be familiar with this because I taped a 40-minute video about it when I got shot with this device. I interviewed top police chiefs. I interviewed Scott. I really got attached to the story because this is not a white thing, a black thing. If you hate cops, if you like, it's not a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. It's a save lives thing. And this is something that's saving lives, and everybody that sees it, police departments all over the world are understanding that. That's why they're starting to deploy this, including the LAPD department. So I interviewed Scott in that video, which I filmed probably around 18 months ago. And he's a very successful hedge fund manager, managed around $300 million. Become a mentor to me. Just always had to answer those tough questions about my business when it's growing, hiring, things he went through since he's taken a lot of companies public over his career. Made investors a lot of money over the years. So, Scott is a rock star, great guy. And you know what? Let's get to that interview right now. Scot Cohen, thanks so much for joining me on Wall Street Unplugged.
Thanks, Frank. Good to be here.
So let's dig right in because we were introduced by a mutual friend who thought I would really be interested in this new idea. So we got in touch. You told me the idea, and I think this was around 18 months ago. And I absolutely was blown away. I loved it. That idea was Wrap Technologies. And let's start from the beginning. Explain Wrap Technologies because there may be people listening to this for the very first time.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's time. I mean, that was probably 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago already. And to your credit, you got it right away and connected with the taser history. And so you were one of the early ones to catch on to what we were doing. But it is a remote restraint tool. The purpose of the tool is to restrain pain compliant, not inflict harm, or a safer, easier way to take somebody into custody where nobody gets hurt. That was the idea 4 years ago. We thought it would take 6 months and $500,000. Here we are 4 years later, about $30 million. Now we're on the NASDAQ trading, and we went from 3 people to close to 40 people. Now we're in 150 departments. When you first got exposure to this, we weren't in one department. So it's been about 8 months to get into 150 departments or so. And we're in 40, maybe 35 or 40 different countries. We've trained thousands of line officers, and now we're in some of the biggest cities in the country. LAPD being the biggest one that we're most proud of, and with a full scale test going on right now, where we're in every district in LA. So I'm excited to be here with this right now, and an opportunity to be on every law officer, every officer in the country's belt. The opportunity to get on that belt is something that can really have an impact on the world, and that's super exciting to me.
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, we have come a long way, and I remember, 18 months at least longer than that. I mean, the stock was trading over the counter. The bull wrap was an amazing device, but yeah, you didn't really have like the supply chain in place or how to train officers. I mean, and no orders yet, as you just said. You're just starting to meet with attorney generals, I believe, and police commissioners. I mean, you invested in lots of companies over your career. When did you know that you were on to something big?
It was seeing the reaction from the chiefs, which really which started to confirm, and these were some smaller departments. But then when you saw when the more departments that we were speaking with, the more training that I witnessed, the more large cities that we were presenting in front of, the more sheriffs that we started having conversations with, the better the product was performing. These were all validators, but it wasn't until that activity just kept ratcheting up and ratcheting up quickly. I mean, this all happened within the last 2 years. It's really taken a new pace. I thought a breakthrough for us was hiring Tom Smith, who is the architect and co-founder with his brother at Taser. There hasn't been a new device on the belt, a new tool for law enforcement in 30 years. So when Tom evaluated this with his people and his network and agreed to come on board, that was another validation for me that put a signal or showed a path towards how important this tool would be, and the validation of that was a combination of seeing the reaction of officers, attorney generals, policymakers, mayors, the chiefs, sheriffs. That whole ecosystem has all lined up, in my eyes anyway, and I'm seeing more and more validation. Every day that we go on, there's more validation that this is going to be the tool, the next new tool that's going to be on every officer's belt.
Now, you just mentioned Tom Smith, right? Who's, I believe, one of the co-founders of Taser, who's now the president of your company. Go through even further how important this was, because when I covered Taser, and this is why I got so attached, one of the reasons why I got attached to this story. When I covered Taser, it was very early on, and I saw the ups and downs and the training that had to be done and the bureaucracy behind getting orders domestically in the U.S. It's never an easy process compared to, I think, overseas, where they'll probably just say, hey, we want orders. Okay, here you go. But how important was it for Tom to come on? Because he's been through all the negatives, right? With Taser to become the company that they are today. But it's just there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, isn't there?
What Tom brought to the table, it was impossible to understand the magnitude of his contribution. At first, I just thought it would be putting together the sales distribution network, tapping some of the overseas connections, but it became much more than that. He immediately he started weighing in on policy. He started weighing in on safety and started putting the right lawyers together to help us with potential litigation that would be coming our way if this, in fact, if an attorney got a hold of it. Things that the experiences they went through in Taser early days and even today. Yes, his relationships absolutely did come to bear, but he understood the manufacturing process there, the logistics with that talent in all those areas to be able to look at a manufacturing line and be able to weigh in on the efficiency of that and the people that needed to operate and be on that line. Tom is able to weigh in all this, given the guy is just so in tune to this business because he built this business from scratch. When you do that and you go all in, it's easy for you to see things that remind you of the past, and also he's making changes and adjustments constantly and saying to himself, well, and I hear him saying this, we did this, but we should be doing that, and we made this mistake, now let's go this way. and this is going to come up to bite us in the butt someday. So we need to adjust and do this. That's invaluable. It would have taken us a decade if we didn't have Tom driving the ship. It's really been invaluable for us.
No, it's great stuff. And look, early on, I flew to New York City to meet your team. I got shot with the device. I put on a video and everything. It was really great. Also interviewed, police chiefs, 30-year vets. It was incredible stuff. But after talking to them, I got really attached to the story. And it wasn't from a financial perspective, right? Scott, I mean, our job is to make our investors money. From a personal perspective, after interviewing and seeing the faces on these officers and saying, basically, man, I wish I had this advice in this situation or that situation. I guess talk about the emotional component, right? Because that's what attached me. I didn't know I'd get that emotionally attached to this because at the end of the day, and even with these guys explain, look, you listen to where you have to listen to public and about police officers. No police officer wants to draw their gun, never let it shoot anyone, even if it's a clean shoot. And this is something that could easily prevent that.
Yeah. So when you put yourself in the situation of these officers or people that are on the front lines, when the thing that's made their job incredibly difficult is the amount of access everybody has to those situations, either the body cameras or the individuals that are walking around with their cell phones taping everything. So now everything they do is in the public eye. So they're being criticized for every move they make. That is incredibly stressful for them. And so to be able to serve them with a tool that makes their job, makes their job safer from a litigation standpoint or just from a physical standpoint, and so to be able to achieve that with this tool, and then beyond that, say you have a mental illness situation where the person is not having a good day, to be able to save that life in that person who could be in harm's way with something that doesn't escalate the situation but just is able to de-escalate. That's an incredible gift to be able to provide that for both sides. And not only do each of those sides win, but society wins when the tool like this is used and deployed versus some of the alternatives that are out there there just hasn't been that choice available for people.
Talk a little bit more about that domestically disturbed, because I lived in New York City for 35 years. I didn't know this, I knew this from basically interviewing DeLuca, which is the chief of all chief police at one time, and he was telling me that 1 out of every 4 calls to New York City police are for domestically disturbed. So these are people that just may walk towards you, or they don't know better. So you have 2 options: you tase that person if they have a heart condition, good luck. Or if you tase them, they could fall on their face, or you shoot them to protect yourself, which, either of those result in death or serious injury, right? So talk about that, because I never realized how big that market is when it comes to domestically disturbed, and it seems like that's really what so many, even the police commissioners and people who are deploying this, it seems like that's a major focus.
Yeah, it is, because there's been no real way to deal with that situation that just keeps escalating. Up until now, it's either you're going to go hands-on, which you never know what that mental person, you don't realize the strength that person could have or what they have on them. So if you're going hands-on, you could be in a danger. You could find yourself in a dangerous situation real quickly. And now, if you go, or let's say that you start off, and your training suggests that you should start off with a heavier use of force, a higher use of force, a gun or a taser. Now you've come into a situation where it's escalating. So if you go for a tase to restrain somebody or just to get control over the situation, and let's say the tase doesn't actually connect and it doesn't work, which happens just about 50% of the time. It's a hard shot and it doesn't always activate. Now you've really escalated the situation. So it just could now you're going to be forced to use a gun, and when that happens, that's a sad situation for the person that could have been killed or seriously injured. But it's also a traumatic experience for the line officer that they had no choice but to go to that higher use of force after an attempt with a taser didn't work, and then that person now is in being critiqued by the public, either by his body cam or his chief, or that pedestrian that witnessed it and recorded it and turned it into the local news for everybody to watch and witness. And then your destiny is determined by the juries. Was that a proper use of force or not? And if it wasn't, there's a good chance the officer could be in jail for the rest of his life, depending. And that's a terrible place to be. And that is, like Chief DeLuca said, it's 25% of the calls. It's 25% of the situations that are happening in America today, big cities and small. It's the same situations in New York, Philadelphia, or some small department in Iowa. It doesn't matter. We're all running into the same issues. Recently, I had a conversation with the former chief or the commissioner of Philadelphia. It's the fifth largest department in the country. His name is Rich Ross. We were watching video of that we have on our site, and of mentally ill, mostly having a bad day, dazed and confused, may or may not have a knife, but certainly they are. The police have been called, and I asked them how often that and the use of force. The only option the officers have is a taser or their gun, or if they're coming with a billy club and you're coming swinging that's going to look terrible, and it's escalating the encounter. But ask them, how many times in Philadelphia does this happen, where you're coming onto a situation like this that we show on our website, where the person's just dazed and confused, could cause harm, may or may not, just unpredictable. He said it happens multiple times a week. I mean, think about that. That means multiple times a week in the city of Philadelphia, these encounters are happening. And therefore, the officers got to make a judgment call. And if he makes the wrong judgment call there because he's scared, he or she is scared, and goes to a higher use of force and deploys that, and it goes wrong, jeopardizes your job, could jeopardize your freedom. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
BolaWrap fills that gap.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, it makes sense, right? BolaWrap, it reminds me of Uber, right? It's just it makes sense that when you go to an Uber, you're probably not going to use taxis all that much. I mean, it's just cheaper, it's safer, it's so many things. But and I compared to Uber because when police officers, chiefs, commissioners, attorney generals, when they see the device, it seems like they all want to deploy it. And I really see this on the belts of police officers all over the U.S. and all over the world. With that said, there's always risks to a business or business model, as you know. And what are some of the risks that you see? Because I know this is something that you always focus on with every investment, everything that you do, and probably why you hired, a big initiative was to hire a former TASER guy to reduce a lot of risk we talked about. But what are some of the things that you see that could become a risk? Is it supply chain issues, or is it regulatory issues, bureaucracy? What are some of the things that you see that worry you a little bit? Because it seems like this trend, it's happening, it's going to happen, it's going to continue to get bigger, but there's always bumps in the road in every single business.
Yep. First risk, and these risks change, right? They're fluent. So the first risk I'd say was, does the device work? Is it wrapping enough where it could stop somebody in the tracks and do what it's supposed to do, which is restrain? And the answer to that is, I'm proud to say, yes. After plenty of capital, bringing on better people from manufacturing, logistics, and sourcing better suppliers, our product is working better than 90% of the time. So we're proud of that. It took a long time to get here versus 4 years ago when the wraps were so inconsistent and we didn't know why. So there's been a lot of effort, a lot of capital, a lot of really good people around the table figuring out how to get this to be optimized to the state it's in today. So that's number one. Number two is capital. A lot of guys have good ideas, they even have something that works, but if you can't get the capital, it's very hard to pay the right people to execute, both on manufacturing, sales, support, training. The things that I just mentioned there aren't simple, and they cost a lot of money, and everybody and someone needs, and multiple people need to manage that process. It's not easy. I just rattled it off like it was easy, but it's not. You need to incentivize the people. You need to come up with proper practices, both on the governance, audit, and comp side. Now we have 40 people that we're responsible for, and we all have to be going in the right direction. If one of us is weak or one of us is not doing the job, it jeopardizes the whole the whole business. And if you have, and furthermore, if you have a rap that goes the wrong way and it's caught on video, that's not going to be helpful to our business. It doesn't mean not everything goes perfect, not every rap's clean, but you better believe it. Like in the beginning, everything counts, and you got to show up and be the best you can. Our raps have to be as consistent as they can, and we need to support that. If there's a problem, a question, something happens, we need to be all over that and own that. And that takes leadership, teamwork, alignment, capital, and passion. All those things to make this a success. And that's one of the things, I think if you combined all those things, that's what's made us get to where we are now, in a position to, again, deliver on having this bull wrap on every officer's belt, not only here, but around the world.
And let's finish with that with around the world, because it seems like you got those orders first. And to me, it seems like that they're a lot easier to get, but it requires, there's a big testing phase through that. You have to go overseas to do this, or wherever you're selling this device. What are maybe some of the countries, not all of them, obviously. So I'm just asking that. I mean, is it easier to deploy these things internationally? And what are a few of the countries that are really interested in this?
Um, the easy answer, the quick answer is yes. Let's just go, but it's not that simple. Yes, because in many countries, Taser hasn't been successful globally. A lot of countries, plenty of large countries and small, consider that Taser's inhumane. It's an electrical weapon. It's a form of torture. So Tasers haven't been nearly as successful as they've been in the U.S. I think in the U.S. there's about an 85 or 90% penetration rate. In overseas, it's a fraction of that. So let's just start there. And in other cases in Europe, there's plenty of places where police don't even carry guns. Okay, so what are they carrying? They're carrying batons and pepper spray and handcuffs. So there is nothing. There's nothing for that. So in many cases overseas, it's just a whiteboard. It's a white space. So when we came in with this, it immediately clicked. If you see, we can see by the social media that's going on in those other countries, whether it be Japan, Germany, Spain, Indonesia, where else? In South America, Brazil, our videos are going viral. And the reason is, in my opinion, the reason why the videos are going viral and the reason why TV is catching us, I think we've been aired over 1,000 times just domestically, and it's no way for us to understand how many times internationally. But the reason why is that people want it. The community is speaking. The media is speaking to the community, and the communities are responding, and therefore this product's getting into the hands of countries that need to have some kind of answer for whatever situation's happening in their countries. And that's why it's sticking and landing so well in those outside the U.S. But in the U.S., there's other things that we have to deal with, that budget cycles. There's lots of different decision makers. There's 18,000 different agencies in the U.S. Overseas, you might have one country that's in charge of a 200,000 person line officer, or sometimes bigger, and it's one person making that buying decision. I mean, there's other people that are weighing in, but it's much more centralized, and they don't have nearly as many choices as they do here in the U.S.
And so, if someone wants to see some of those videos, because it's millions, even tens of million people have been watching them, how can people see that? Do you have a place where they can see a lot of that?
Yeah, we don't even know. I mean, these aren't videos that we produce; they're producing them. So, if I think some of it's on our website, but if you Google it and you look at like the one that's going on in Brazil or Japan, I mean, I think the Brazil one got 30 million views. There's one in Japan that got 9 million views. There's one there's one in I think Spain. I'm not even sure, that got another 25 million views. So I don't know. I'll get someone will forward me the ones that are super active. I'm not sure which one's active now, but you can go on up and see that. And on our site, we put we try to put plenty of the media that we can get our hands on our site, so you can see castings or airings of the bowler wrap, talking mostly about our demonstrations. The bowler wraps come to Salt Lake City. The bowler wraps come to some small town in Georgia. And that's just on demonstrations. What I get excited about is what's going to happen when the wraps start showing up. We've had 3 wraps to date, but what's going to happen when that wrap gets cut on video and it goes viral? I think that there's going to be much more news happening as it relates to the actual wraps versus the demonstrations. And we're already seeing that. We're seeing media, and we get forwarded these where the newscaster or the local news is saying, well, there was a shooting in XYZ district. Where was the bowler wrap? Why didn't our officers carry the bowler wrap? There was a taser incident where this 86-year-old got tased and hurt or killed. Why didn't we have the bowler wrap? And that we're hearing that more and more and more. Reporters are reaching out to us. The newspapers are reading it, newspaper and local stations and national stations. I think we've had probably at least 10 nationally televised segments on the bowler wrap. So I see more and more of that coming, but a switch from demo and training to actually wraps and saving lives.
Yeah, it's great because I know that you have a history of making your investors money, and again, being a hedge fund manager or newsletter writer and stuff. But just seeing this feel good story where this is a device that saves lives is really cool. And for me personally, Scott, I just want to thank you because again, when I got introduced to you, you didn't know me, and we talked about this, and I went out there and we hit it off really quick, and we talked about a lot of things other than rap and different ideas, and you've helped me out tremendously. So it's been a big benefit for my subscribers. I know they're thankful, and a big benefit to me as well. So I just want to say thanks.
Well, I give you all the credit because we didn't know each other. The minute you took a look at this thing and saw that video, you knew there was something there, and you were early. You were way early. You were the first guy to print on this and the first guy to really do the deep, heavy lift on and started to do the work. Spent more time than anybody at that point in time. And still, the work that you did was I think that's what got you to come up with that report. And guess what? I'm happy to say that you were right. You were early and you were right. The business has changed a lot since you first reported on this. So I'm grateful that James introduced us, and I hope that your subscribers and your investors will benefit in the future for us being more and more from us showing more and more wraps, and hopefully in your subscribers' towns they'll see bowler wraps on their officers' belts, protecting them and the communities, and that's our goal here. So I really appreciate it, Frank.
Nah, me too, man. Thanks so much for coming on. I know you're a busy man. Keep doing that good work. I know the subscribers love it, and we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, guys, great stuff from Scott. I said earlier how he's been a mentor to me. When I first met him, I talked about my business, the publishing business, how I was launched a security token, which he found fascinating, but he was one of the people I went to and said, listen, tear this idea apart for me. And he asked me a whole bunch of questions. I answered him. He was like, holy shit. This makes sense. I said, that's what I think too. We launched our security token, Curzio Equity Owners Token, which will go free trading in July. And since we launched, it's just covering that industry. It's amazing how far it's come. It's amazing how many people are reaching out to us now. Big companies doing tens of millions, even hundreds of millions sales, want to launch security tokens, and they're calling us to learn how to do it, which is really exciting. But I remember one of our talks, and he was asking me, how big is your market? I told him how much competitors generating. He had no idea. Nobody understands how big the financial newsletter market is. It's a $2 billion plus industry easily a year in sales. It's unbelievable, and it's a high margin business. It's a very tough business to get the infrastructure in place, credit card processing, everything. We're there, and it's cool. But he asked me, what are your goals? And I said, for Curzio Research, it's pretty simple. I said, I want to win. And I'm very competitive, and I want to be the biggest in the space. And he quickly stopped me and said, that shouldn't be a goal. He goes, I was the same way early on. Just had a big ego, and it led him to making poor decisions. So he's like, go slow. Don't be arrogant. Set small goals for yourself, your company. Just a lot of things that made sense from the mistakes that he's made. And Scott's just one of the numerous people. I'm fortunate enough to be in this industry for 25 years. I've helped a lot of people make money. I have surprised probably about 15 years ago the people who actually listen to this podcast. Just business owners, so many great people, also hedge fund managers, and just a lot of people have reached out, and I've reached out to them, and a lot of people have helped me. People have been through this process. Again, you want to limit risk as much as you can, just like Scott mentioned with hiring the co-founder of Taser. I mean, just having the supply chain in order, having making sure that you're training these people. You know how hard that is? I mean, what use is it if you get, hundreds of thousands of orders, but yet you can't fill them for 3 years? It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So you want to limit your risk as much as possible. And Scott has helped me with that. Just one small example of how he's helped me. And just for you young entrepreneurs out there, and even for you older, successful people, no matter how young, old you are, how much experience you have, it doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk or Bill Gates, there's always people who are smarter than you, always people that can educate you, and always people that can help you become a better person, a better manager, a better CEO. So always listen. Doesn't hurt to listen. But real quick here, Scott's also sharing another big idea with me, one of his next investments. It's going to be open to accredited investors. So it's a private company that plans to go public in the future. I'm going to share that with my Curzio Venture subscribers over the next month or so. It is an incredible company. I already looked at it. I'm meeting with the head over the next few weeks. It is really, really incredible. It has me excited. I have lots of questions, but it looks really, really exciting. It's something that I'm pretty sure I'm definitely going to invest in if I give it to my subscribers. But just a few questions. Again, I like meeting people in person before I do this. This is very, very important. And this person is an entrepreneur, sold numerous companies, very, very wealthy. And he's got a big edge on this massive market that is going to get bigger and bigger that few people are talking about. It has me very excited. So I can't talk much about the company, but if I do give it to Curzio Venture subscribers, I'm investing it as well. I like to do that. So I'll share that idea with you once everything's ready to go, once my due diligence is complete. Again, it's going to take place over the next 2 to 3 weeks because it is a private company that we're going to be able to participate in the capital raise. And the plan is for this company to go IPO shortly after. That's the plan. And last thing here, just quick disclosure. I am an investor in Rap Technologies. I have not sold one share. I believe in a long-term story. I'm not someone that tells you, oh, this could go up 10x, 20x. You could make 5,000% next week if you buy before 3 p.m. today, which we see in promotions. But when you see those promotions, there's a nice disclaimer. We cannot buy our own stocks that we recommend, even though we think it's going to go up 10,000% and you're going to be a billionaire. We cannot invest in it based on our policies. It's not like that here. I eat my own cooking. I'm investing in the stocks. I haven't sold a share, so I'm not coming on pitching an idea. I just want to let you know I am an investor in this. I just love it. I think the product makes sense. I think almost every police force will eventually carry it because it does save lives and it will save lives. But I remain very positive in the name, which, it's going to be similar to Taser. You're going to have ups and downs and different orders. We're in it earlier than anyone that's going to buy it now. So if you do buy it, if you do like it, do your own due diligence, go to the website, ask millions of questions, assume I don't know what I'm talking about. And if you do decide to come in, what I would do is I would suggest, scaling into it because it is going to be volatile. It was volatile. We invested in it at, I think, 350, 4, and then it went to 7. Then it came back down to like 350, and now it's at near $7 again. So you're going to see that with these companies. It's based on orders, but they're just starting to get in lots and lots of orders. And I think the long-term story for me, it's a $200 million market cap. I could easily see this being a $1 billion company going forward. It may take 2 years, it may take 4 years, it may take 6 years, but it's something I believe in, and it is a small cap and it is risky. So just be careful, guys. I just want to make sure, I have you back. We disclose everything, but I think there's a good opportunity there. But if you're going to invest in it now, just, scale into it, be patient, build your position up over time. Because long term, I really do like this stock and only put in money that you could afford to lose because it is a small cap. And again, I just want to be upfront with you guys. Now, let's move on to my educational segment. Here we go. Hopefully you're paying attention. So what do we know about the coronavirus right now? And this is as of Tuesday afternoon, which I'm doing this podcast. By the time you hear it, it's Wednesday. after the close. So we know that the infection number is 73,000, a little bit above that. Deaths close to 1,900. But I want to cover some of the things that mainstream media is not telling you. Let's include some of the stories in the past 2 days, the news that comes out that's on smaller but reputable sites, but for some reason, nobody cares. So one of the things is CDC now admits that the coronavirus can be spread by people who aren't showing symptoms. So there's people that get the coronavirus, test positive, but don't have any symptoms. You're going to be working. If you're in China, you're going to go back to work next to people like this. And they could transmit that disease to you. We already knew that, but the CDC just confirmed it. And it's funny because China says, well, about 80% of our factories are now running across oil and gas sectors, electricity, all state-run companies. Of course, they're not close to full capacity. They just turned on, it was off. Now it's on. So most have been turned back on. Again, not even close to full capacity of the workers working there. Macau's trying to reopen their casinos. Government said operators can request another 30-day extension to prepare to open, and that was after the 15-day closure. But the government actually said this, that operators can request another 30-day extension to prepare to open, but after these 30 days, they're going to be required to open. So the government's like, you're opening. I don't give a shit. You're going to open. I don't care how bad the coronavirus is. I know it hasn't ended, but you're going to open those casinos. Think about that for a minute. The government is basically forcing these casino operators to open regardless of risk. It's kind of interesting. Although we're hearing signs that the spread is getting contained, I keep reading stories. It's slowing down. We heard that at 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. Now it's 70,000. Slowing down. Okay, if it's slowing down, then how come cities in Wuhan, as of yesterday, Wuhan is basically ground zero for the coronavirus, they're further tightening travel restrictions. So this started on Monday. Local residents will not be allowed to leave their homes outside of designated hours. If they do, or if they disobey, they're going to be subject to detention. You let me know what detention means. Detention here is not a big deal. Detention in China, I'm sure it's a really big deal. So for something that's supposedly de-escalating, coming down, risks are coming down, you're putting on more restrictions. You're tightening travel restrictions right now. It's crazy because there's a story in New York Times where they said this professor who's 40 years old, teaches at a prestigious college in China. Her husband almost died. So they are near one of the districts, one of the cities that have special rules with the lockdown. It's not just lockdown, but listen to this. This is pretty cool. So the husband almost died. He didn't almost die from the coronavirus. They were eating dinner and they were eating fish and he choked on a fish bone. She left to take him to the hospital. They wouldn't let him take it. You can't. Only one person, according to the neighborhood rules, only one person is allowed to leave the house. So after a while, they actually saw the situation. They said, okay, but who knows? I mean, maybe if that person is infected, now you're at a hospital, whatever. But think about that scenario. You're going to put someone in detention, detain them, whatever it is, for how many days, weeks? What do you do? I mean, this isn't just about the coronavirus. People get hurt all the time. 1.3 billion people in China, 500 million are on lockdown. So I'm sure some of these people are sick and maybe they can't make it to the hospital, but you can't take them because only one person is allowed with, I guess, proper paperwork or whatever it is to travel or to go to the hospital. I mean, that's crazy. These are just some of the little things that are popping up. I don't know if you saw shipping companies. So the shipping companies that carry goods from China to the rest of the world, they're all saying that they're reducing the number of seaborne vessels. And this is, measures to stop the spread of the coronavirus, which is, killing demand for their services and threatening to disrupt global supply chains. This is on Tuesday. Have you seen the Baltic Dry Index lately? Take a look at it. In September, it was 2,500. It's 434. It's crashed. And they're saying, look, we got to take vessels off the market. There's no demand. China shut down. But again, no need to worry because JP Morgan's all over this. JP Morgan's got to figure it out. They say peak corona is only 3 weeks away. Our analysts estimate, based on their model, They're predicting the peak to occur in 3 weeks around early March. This implies a time scale of about 8 weeks from global attention to peak. And they put in the wonderful sentence, which is quite comparable to that of SARS in 2003. Why are you comparing this to SARS? It's like comparing the global credit crisis to, a recession, a normal pullback in the market. It was different. We needed measures. The unemployment rate would have went over 30%. Nobody agrees with it. Everybody hates that the banks got bailed out. But if you just left it alone, it could have destroyed the entire financial markets globally. You can't compare that to, we had a recession in 2002. The technology crisis. No, this was different. This was leverage. This was end of the world stuff. Yet you're comparing it to something that really can't be compared to. Mac Lipstitch. Yes, that's a real name. He's Harvard public health, smart guy, talks about the coronavirus, widely followed. He says it's likely we'll see a global pandemic. If the pandemic happens, 40 to 70% of people worldwide are likely to be infected in the coming year. This is an article in the Wall Street Journal, actually. Again, nobody's really talking about it. You had people at Los Alamos National Lab. Okay, these are the guys that really nailed the course of the 2003 outbreak for SARS. They modeled it, they nailed it, they got it right. And someone asked them, what do you think about the coronavirus? And they said, based on our models, at least 550,000 cases, maybe 4.4 million or something in between. They're only reporting 73,000 cases? Based on this model, these are people who actually got SARS right, are saying between 550 and 4.4 million people. Think about the impact that that's going to have in the global economy. Let's keep going here. Look at Hong Kong. I don't know if you saw travel restrictions, the visitors. So they usually average around 225,000 visitors per day. Since the start of this thing, it's down to 3,000. How do you think that's doing for their economy? And that's the biggest point here, guys. What people don't understand is the negative impacts that the coronavirus is creating. And I'm not talking about outside the normal things like, wow, China's economy is on lockdown. I'm talking about outside of that. And when you have 500 million people on lockdown and scared to go back to work, I mean, you can't model it. You can't model it. You have to use your common sense. Picture yourself if you were in that situation. What would you do? You think you're going to rush back to work? Absolutely not. And maybe if you're single and you're 35, 40 and healthy, maybe. But if you have kids, are you really going to risk that and get the coronavirus, come back and give it to your kids? If you go back to work, you're probably going to get infected. And the death rate is creeping up. We haven't seen that. I mean, with SARS, it was kind of like, 10, 12, 11, 10%. I mean, we're seeing the death rate creep up. It's probably below 1%, but really, if China, that's a one negative thing about lying about your numbers. If you're saying 73,000, only 70,000 infected, it's 2.5%, which was below 2%. So again, that makes me nervous from leaving. Wouldn't it make you nervous? Let's go with some of those impacts real quick, because you have Hyundai, which I mentioned last week, production shut down at its South Korea plant. South Korea? What are you talking about, South Korea? That's crazy. But they're not getting their parts from China. So they closed down. 35% of all their production comes out of those plants. The London fashion show is huge. It's this week. Not only do you have people wearing masks in London, but there's several designers that said they're not able to attend. They can't show their clothing line since China makes their clothes. That's where they produce. I mean, China, by far, the world's leading supplier of textiles. The Olympics are being held in Japan. It's only 157 days away. Not that long. They're already talking about it. Of how they're going to put things, just risk measures in place. They're talking about it. I mean, it's not Zika, right? Which scared how many athletes from going to the Olympics in Rio? I mean, just from a few people dying. Think about the impact it's going to have in Japan and on athletes. Are athletes really going to travel there? Because this thing, Again, we're not talking about a long time away. I wanted to share a couple more things for you before I go here, because here's some of the emails I'm getting from subscribers. An email at frankcurzioresearch.com. My job is to get this story right. And everything I see tells me you should fear this. This is a risk that's serious. And with markets, we're in a growth market and stocks trading at all-time highs. To assume that this is a short-term risk is absolutely crazy. If I'm wrong, no big deal. Lower your exposure to China stocks. You're still going to have other stocks that are going to do well with no exposure to China. But if I'm right, it's going to save you a hell of a lot of money. And that's what we want to do. We want to protect those gains that we made, because all the newsletters, crypto newsletters on fire right now. Crypto, gold. Good safe havens are in this. But you want to protect a lot of that capital, right? I mean, my job as a newsletter, not just to give you ideas so you can make money. No. My job is to be there for you when things aren't good. And this is one of those times where I think you have to worry. Could I be wrong? Of course. Everybody could be wrong about everything, but it's worth taking some off the table. Again, I'm not telling you to short the markets where you're going to get destroyed and living on park benches. I'm telling you, just lower your exposure to some of these stocks. In fact, Micron's getting upgraded. Wynn Resorts is getting upgraded. The worst is over. You're out of your mind. Tesla, all-time highs. A lot of that growth is tied to China. We don't know how long this is going to last. Apple just reported. They said, we don't even know. We have no idea what our guidance is going to be. We can't even give you a number. We thought the number between 63 and 68 was good enough, 68 billion. It's not. We have no idea. They don't even know. But here's some emails I'm getting, and feel free, if you're impacted by this, I want to know, because these are stories nobody's really talking about. And Aaron wrote to me that, hey, Frank, these posts showed up on Reddit. Take it for what it may, but they seem legit. I like Reddit. There's especially the furniture one. And he has losing jobs at growing but small company that makes hearing aids. And then another one, Chinese textiles that make furniture not arriving until June. This person was told to prepare their resume. He says, are you hearing anything like this similar from your subscribers and listeners? I am. These stories are impacting lots of companies outside of China. From another company in New Zealand who sends just all kinds of hardware for showers, and they have all these orders. They can't fill them. Sorry, we don't even know. We don't know when we're going to be able to fill them. That's crazy. Forces them to go to another competitor or whatever that doesn't have exposure to China for shower heads and stuff like that. Looking at Ali. Ali writes in and says, hey, Frank, I read your advisory last week about China. This is Curzio Research Advisory. Just wanted to give you a data point on it. Because we just moved and bought our first ever home in San Diego, where we just moved. We're redoing the floors, and the vinyl planks we wanted were only partially in stock. No big deal, right? We're the first half now and get the rest on reorder when it comes in. Wrong. The flooring store called their distributor, who sold out. They said they have zero visibility into when they'd get their next shipment from China. Coronavirus has ground everything to a halt. He says, see, support your thesis. This is the impact that nobody's talking about in so many different businesses. And Bob writes in, this is a really good point. This is common sense. Because, hey, Frank, one thing I've not been hearing anything about regarding the coronavirus, what about the people in factories in China and elsewhere who physically handle the products that we buy? Wouldn't that open up the possibility of spreading the virus to consumers from this source as well? How will that impact the markets? It's a good question. I'm sure they'll be sterilized or whatever they need to do, but it's a good question. I mean, if something's coming from China, do I really want to handle it right now? I don't even know what the statistics or what they're saying is true. But remember, regardless of China and how much stimulus they're going to push into the market, how much they're going to tell you about the figures not being good, and how much they're going to say, well, we don't need any help solving this. Don't worry about it. Why, you're a professional? You've been doing this for 50 years? Nah, we don't need your help. We're going to keep this in-house. Crazy. U.S. companies, they're going to have to report earnings next quarter. And you're going to see more warnings come out than you've seen probably in the last 8 years. More companies like Apple are going to come out over the next month or two and lower their estimates drastically. And it's almost everyone that has exposure to China. Just be prepared, because when that happens, looking at Apple, it's not going to fall 2-3%. A lot of these companies have even more exposure to China. They're going to fall 10, 15, 20%. I mean, that's how much these companies are up pretty much in the last 5-6 months. Just be careful. I'm not calling for that all-out market crash, but for stocks to be trading at all-time highs right now, assuming that coronavirus is not a risk at all, is absolutely insane. So lower your exposure to China. I provided ways to play this in my Curzio Research Advisory newsletter, along with dozens of companies that should be avoided at all costs. At least lower your exposure. if you're interested in learning more, finding that, go to CurzioResearch.com. Again, I said last week, got a special offer. It was $49 for the year to subscribe to the newsletter. It is a 16-page report, details. And I'm going to continue to update it to all my subscribers because this is a risk you need to take seriously. Again, I hope I'm wrong on this. I hope you come back and say, Frank, you were wrong on it. Again, I don't want people to freaking die and stuff, but the things that I'm reading, what I'm hearing from everybody is a lot different from what's being reported. And you know what? You need to be careful. Not all the time. We've been pretty bullish for a very long time. This is one of those times we need to be careful. So, guys, that's it for me. Any questions, comments? No, I'm going to get a lot. I'm getting tons of emails. Again, email frank@CurzioResearch.com. Anything that you're seeing about the coronavirus, positive or negative. I'm not looking for just negative stories, just positive, negatives, different stories that you're hearing. If things are coming back online, we want to know that. Because then, I'll take my trades off or whatever. But I'm not hearing that right now. Again, the best source is real-time information from you. This podcast is getting bigger and bigger, word of mouth. I really appreciate it. And the reason we get ahead of these things a lot is because of the trends that I hear from you guys when you email at frankcurzioresearch.com. So that's it for me. I'll see you guys in 7 days. Take care.
The information presented on Wall Street Unplugged is the opinion of its hosts and guests. You should not base your investment decisions solely on this broadcast. Remember, it's your money and your responsibility. Wall Street Unplugged, produced by the Choose Yourself Podcast Network, the leader in podcasts produced to help you choose yourself.